Introduction. Students in the 4th semester of STA 108 Basic Statistics and Probability conducted research. Statisticians gather, display, analyze and interpret data to make decisions. Calculus, linear algebra and probability are all used in statistics. Statistics lead to conclusions. Descriptive statistics include mean, median, mode, variance and standard deviation. The study's goal is to identify the elements that influence their predicted insurance expenses. The cost of life insurance may be misinterpreted. Not everyone understands how insurance companies calculate premiums. Knowing this will make budgeting easier. Monthly payments are determined by gender, smoking, children, and location. Aside from affordability, there are other considerations to consider. Find a reliable insurance firm, calculate how much coverage you will need, and grasp the difference between term and permanent life insurance. To learn more about the options, speak with a state-licensed life insurance professional. An insurance will pay for any accidents that occur to an injured party. Spending on life, medical and health insurance stems from solid, affluent economic organizations. Every group requires insurance. It allows you to live safely. This will have an impact on how low-income individuals manage hazards. High medical expenditures will impact people with low and medium incomes. Objective. There are 4 objectives of the study. First and foremost is to describe the demographic profile between the gender, smoking status and region with the charges of the insurance expenses. Secondly is to determine the distribution of body mass index (BMI) and children with the charge of insurance expenses. Thirdly, to find the relationship between the BMI and the charges of insurance expenses. Last but not least, to investigate how the BMI will affect the charges of insurance expenses. Significance of study. When considering the benefits of insurance, Social Security may be the first thing that springs to mind. Insurance alleviates or reduces the financial impact of an unforeseeable event. Exogenous occurrences such as sickness, accidents, death, and natural calamities are limited. When it comes to health insurance, it might be a matter of life and death. The gender of the customer impacts the pricing. Statistical models can be used by insurance firms to predict a person's longevity. Women live 5 years longer than males. Women pay their premiums for longer periods of time than men, which allows them to qualify for lower rates. Smoking raises the likelihood of developing health problems. Insurance companies treat smokers differently. Smokers pay twice as much for the same insurance coverage as non-smokers. Another reason to stop is financial ramifications. The most important aspect in determining life insurance rates is age. If you are young, you will probably continue to pay the insurance company for years before they have to repay your family. As a result, you should purchase insurance as soon as possible. You do not need insurance after graduation if you do not have any dependents.
Hi, my name is Nur Syazwana and I will explain about methodology, which including the data description, graphical technique and numerical technique. 2.1 Data description. The objective of the data description to store all the information that we have and to summarize it in one terms. So descriptive statistics let us reasonably simplify the large amount of information. So the information from our project title from a survey insurance expense of the society. So based on the data, there are factors that affecting the insurance expense, which is gender or habits and lifestyle, which is the smoking status, and also health condition, which is the BMI, and age, which including the children, and lastly region of the states. Therefore, the independent variable is the factor affecting the insurance expense, meanwhile the dependent variable is the insurance expense. So there are 2 sorts of variable, which is qualitative variable and quantitative variable. Furthermore, for the data description, the independent variable from the data we got is firstly the gender. Gender is the qualitative variable because it cannot be counted and the scale of measurement is nominal. And then we have smoking status, also qualitative and nominal, the nominal measurement. And also region has qualitative variable and nominal scale of measurement. Meanwhile, the BMI, which is the body mass index, the variable is quantitative continuous because it can be counted, and the number is not the whole number. It can be in the fraction, in the point, and the scale of measurement is interval. And next, the children, which is the age. The type of variable is quantitative discrete because it can be counted, and the number only have the whole number only, and the scale of measurement is ratio. 2.2 2.2 graphical technique. The graphical technique is one of the strategies for visually describing the output of the data we had. So a variety of graphical technique can be used, such as bar chart, pie chart, scatter plot, histogram, and so on. The x-axis is what and y-axis is placed in the graph. Here is the table for graph used for the variable we got, which is we divided to qualitative and quantitative. For qualitative, the variable gender have a bar chart, and smoking status is a pie chart, and the region is we have a bar chart. And for quantitative, the BMI we have two box and whisker plot and the scatter plot, and also the children, which is the age, is given in the box and whisker plot. Next, 2.3 numerical technique. A numerical technique is a strategy that uses a calculating approach to determine the information based on the data that we have. So firstly, we have measure of central tendency, which means that a single value that attempts to describe a set of data by identifying the central position and within the set of data. For example, like mean, mode, and median. Next, we have measure of dispersion. Is defined as a measure of spread or variability of data distribution. The most common that we always use is variance and standard deviation. Then the third measure is a measure of location, which means that rank order data collection is divided into 4 equal sections by quartiles to determine the position. So the values that divide each sector are known as the first, second, and third quartile, and they are denoted by the letters Q1, Q2, and Q3 respectively. And we have measure of skewness, which is a measure of the asymmetry of the distribution. So the measure of the skewness is determined by PMS, which is person coefficient of skewness. When we have PMS is more than 0, so we have a positively skew, which means to the right, and when it's less than 0 is negatively, and which means left. The shape is to the left. And when PMS is equal to 0, it means that no skew or normal. And lastly, we have regression. Regression is a method for determining the nature and magnitude of the relationship between the dependent y and independent x variable. So an equation is construct to describe the existing of a link between the variable. So we can use the equation to identify the best fit equation for represent the two variables.
Hi, my name is Nur Haziqah and I will present the result and their interpretation. Firstly, for the data presentation, the first data would be a bar graph. The first graph would be the graph representing the number of insurance expenses between males and females. We can see that the female has the highest frequency, which is 75, about 50.34% compared to the male, which is 74, about 49.66%. For the second bar graph, it shows the insurance expenses between other regions. Based on the graph above, we can conclude that the southeast region appears to have the highest insurance expenses, which is 46, about 30.87%, while the northwest region is the one that has the least insurance expenses with 30, about 20.15%. Next is pie chart. According to the pie chart, the highest percentage of non-smokers that are taking insurance expenses is 85.91%, which is 128 people, while the lowest percentage of the smokers that are taking insurance expenses is 14.09%, which is 21 people. Moving on to the box and whisker plot, the first graph will be BMI. For the first quarter, 25% of the BMI have the frequency of insurance expenses less than 28 people, and another 75% of the BMI have the frequency of insurance expenses more than 28 people. Second quartile, also known as the median, 50% of the BMI have the frequency of insurance expenses less than 31 people, and another 50% of the BMI have the frequency of insurance expenses more than 31 people. Moreover, for the third quartile, 75% of the BMI have the frequency of insurance expenses less than 36 people, and another 25% of the BMI have the frequency of insurance expenses more than 36 people. Other than that, it also shows the value of the minimum, which is 19 people, and the maximum value is 47 people. Finally, the shape of the distribution is skewed to the right. The second box and whisker plot would be children. First of all, the minimum and maximum value of this data are 0 children and 5 children respectively. For the first quartile, 25% of the children have a frequency of insurance expenses less than 0, and another 75% of the children have a frequency of insurance expenses more than 0. After that, for the second quartile or median, 50% of the children have a frequency of insurance expenses less than 1, and another 50% of the children have a frequency of insurance expenses more than 1. And for the third quartile, 75% of the children have the frequency of insurance expenses less than 2, and another 25% of the children have the frequency of insurance expenses more than 2. Lastly, the shape of the distribution is symmetry. The next part is the analysis of descriptive statistics. The table shows some statistical description from IBM SPSS for the variable affecting insurance expenses, which is BMI, children, and charges. The minimum value for BMI, children, and charges are 20, 0, and 1 to 42.82, whereas the maximum value for the three variables is 47, 5, and 63770.43 respectively. The mean value or the average value for the variable is 31.67, 0.91, and 12289.3298 respectively. The standard deviation for the variable is 6.176, 1.086, and 12059.75398 respectively. Furthermore, the figure shows the scatter plot of charges and BMI. If there was a positive or negative correlation, we can infer the pattern of the statistical data's distribution from the scatter plot. As a result of the observation, we can conclude that there is a weak positive correlation between BMI and insurance charges from the scatter diagram here. Now, as you can see, this is the table for correlation analysis that has been done by IBM SPSS. The value that has been obtained is 0.229, which means R is greater than 0. By using Pearson product moment correlation coefficient, we can prove that there is a weak positive correlation between body mass index and charges. Next, we can see from the model summary provided by IBM SPSS that the results shown were R and R squared. In this model, R represents the Pearson correlation coefficient and R squared represents the coefficient of determination. The R value is 0.229, indicating that there is a weak positive correlation between BMI and insurance charges. On the other hand, the R squared value is 0.052. This shows that 5.2% of the total variation in the charges is influenced by BMI. Finally, the coefficient table is shown in the final figure from IBM SPSS. The regression coefficient output from the table analysis are constant. A, which equal to negative 1862.406, and slope B equals to 446.820. Therefore, the regression equation is y equals to negative 1862.406 plus 446.820x. Since the constant A value is negative 1862.406, it means that when BMI is 0, the charges would be negative 1862.406. Furthermore, since the value of the slope B is positive, which is 446.820, it implies that there is a positive relationship exists between the two variables. This indicates that for every 1 unit increase in BMI, the charges will increase by 446.820.
Hello, my name is Nursyuhadah binti Samat, and I'm going to present for the conclusion part. So the objective of this case study includes describing the demographic profile between gender, smoking status, and region with the charges of insurance expenses. And secondly, we have determining the distribution of BMI and children with the charges of the insurance expenses. And the third one is finding the relationship between BMI and charges of insurance expenses. And the last one, we have to investigate how BMI will affect the charges of insurance expenses. However, the main focus of this study was to determine the relationship between gender, habits and lifestyle, which is the smoking status, health condition, which is the BMI, age, which is the children, and lastly the region, with insurance expenses. It was to know if any charges in any those independent variables will affect the insurance expenses. For Chapter 2, descriptive statistics reasonably reduce a large amount of information from the survey insurance expenses of society into a brief overview. It involves scatter plot, including box and whisker plot, for qualitative variable, while for qualitative variable, we use bar and pie chart. This also includes the coefficient of skewness, which is a measure of the distribution's asymmetry, which determines the shape of the data distribution. Next, in Chapter 3, varieties of ways or method were used to gain and interpret data value. For example, in coefficient of variation. To find coefficient of variation, we need to divide the standard deviation with mean and multiply it with 100. If coefficient variation of distribution, for example, A is greater than coefficient B, we can conclude that distribution B is more consistent than distribution A. We also use SPSS output to interpret our data. The Pearson correlation is 0.229. This means that there is a weak positive correlation between BMI and charges of the insurance expenses, and the coefficient of determination from the SPSS output 0.052. This means that 5.2% of the total variation in charges of insurance expenses is influenced by BMI.